Sairam, I offer my most loving pranams at Bhagwan's lotus feet, and I pray to Swami that he gives us all the understanding that he alone is the one who speaks, he alone is the one who listens. Brothers and sisters, elders, Sairam to all of you. We are celebrating a day which we believe is the day on which Swami declared his avatarhood, the day on which Swami revealed his true nature. But interestingly, though we call the 20th of October as the Avatar Declaration Day, the declaration or the revelation itself happened over an extended period of time. I'm sure most of you are aware of Swami's childhood and the events that occurred during that period. Swami would materialize objects, Swami would take children to the Kalpavriksham and materialize many fruits from that tree. Swami would pull out objects from an empty bag. But that time Swami would tell those children that if you talk about this to other elders, I will stop doing these things. So it was kept under wraps. But slowly after Swami moved on to Urvakonda, is one of the most important episodes that happened on 8th of March 1940. It was the day after the Shivratri of that year when Swami came back after the night's worship. And the legend is that there was a scorpion bite incident, but a scorpion was not found, and Swami just revealed much later that it was just a moment where he chose to reveal himself. After that time, Swami started behaving very differently from the boy whom he was known to be. And there were some incidents during that time when Swami went into a faint. It looked like Swami was in a coma, and they tried different things. They got a doctor, and somebody got a sorcerer. And even during that time, Swami looked at the sorcerer and said, "What are you coming here to cure me for? Don't you recognize me? I am the one whom you have been worshipping all these years. So offer your salutations and get lost." So that was one moment when Swami showed who he is. And then after that, the episodes in Kadri and all of those incidents where the family was desperately trying to get back this child who had started behaving so differently. After all those episodes, they said, all right, we'll put him back to school. We'll take him back to Urvakonda, let him join the school. Maybe the environment at school with friends, things will change. So they take him back to school. And during the vacation, again, that incident at Hampi, where Swami showed that he was one with the deity at the temple at Hampi, the Virupaksha deity. But none of these were proof enough. All the while, the family, especially the elder brother, were thinking that they could do something still to reclaim this child of their family. But Swami would say that it happened on the 20th of October, the day we are here to celebrate, when Swami was one day going to school. He lost that collar pin which was given by the government officer who had taken him to Hampi. And on that day, Swami said that this is the moment. And Swami would chant a beautiful poem, sing a beautiful poem, saying that this was the poem that I sang on that day. When Swami went back to his home, when only his sister-in-law was there, he threw the bag of books and he said, "I am no more your Satyam." And Swami sings that poem, "Nenu sayini teliyumu nikkamuganu, mamata bayumu yatnamul manukonumu, paase naku mitodi deha sambandham inka, kaadu nanpatte mari yetti ghanuni kaina." So till then, this family was still trying. They were taking him to a doctor, they were taking him to holy people. They thought that this boy was possessed by somebody called Sai Baba. But on that day, Swami said, "Nenu sayini teliyumu nikkamuganu." This is the truth. This is the final fact. Yatnamul manu konumu. He said, give up your efforts. You can't do anything about this. You have to accept this truth. And Swami said, "Kaadu nanpatta mari yetti ghanuni kaina." He said, however great one may be, however immensely scholarly one may be, he cannot change me from my resolve. Swami said, my devotees are waiting, my task is waiting for me, I have to go. So this was the moment when Swami said, though he was revealing all through his childhood what his divinity is, it was on this day, the 20th of October, Swami said, there is no more going back. This is the reality. and you all have to deal with it. And as I said, the incident was marked by the loosing of the collar pin. And we had the opportunity to speak to one of Swami's schoolmates, the son of Mr. Anjanelu. We all would be aware of that person. It is in his house, Swami went and sat on the rock and sang Manasa Bhajare. His son, I think his name is Narsim Das, used to travel with Swami every day from home to school. And on that particular day, Swami lost that collar pin. And for a few minutes, Swami was very, very panicked. He was searching, they were searching all around the school, in the playground. But suddenly Swami stopped. And Swami said, "My eyes left me." And these little children around Swami were surprised. What was this boy speaking about? And when Swami was referring to that incident, Swami had much later written a beautiful song on that incident. Swami would sing, "Collar pin nokati jari kanapadaledu, marpu kaligenu nadu." He said that was the day when the collar pin was lost, and that was the day the change came. So though the revelation was slow, though the declaration was happening over many, many years, Swami said that was the day that brought the change. So in many ways, though we are here and calling it the Avatar Declaration Day, though we are calling it the day Swami established himself as an avatar of the age, we are actually celebrating the day of change. And the change is, Swami says, I am divine, I have come before you, and when you recognize this fact, things will change. Everything changed for that little family. It was a very small and simple family in Puttaparthi, not very sophisticated. They were all very, very ordinary people. But when Swami declared this, their lives changed. And it is that change that we are celebrating. And when Swami said that day is the day of change, I think that is a hint for all of us. How do we have to observe this day? What should this day remind us of? We all would have seen, when a couple gets married, eventually when they get a child, when an infant comes home, the entire household changes, right? A small baby coming into the house, the lives of all the people in that household changes. Everything is centered around that child. And I've had brothers and cousins who get children when they're born. You would see that the clothes will be hanging all around the place, the play toys. When the child starts crawling around, and you're all scared, what will the child pick up and put in their mouth? So you keep the house clean. A small infant coming into the house causes so much change. The challenge that Swami is throwing at us is, I am coming into your life. And this is my reality. This is my divinity. And I am entering your lives. How much are you going to change? How much is your life going to modify to acknowledge this presence of this new person, of this divinity which you have come to meet with? And I feel the Avatar Declaration Day is a day of such a change. But of course, before that, the question is, what do we know of Swami? If you were to ask me, is Swami God? Well, out of my devotion, I might say, yes, Swami is God. I might say, yes, Swami is the God of all gods. But the fact is, there is no way I can tell with guarantee. If you give me a gadget and you ask me, what is this? Even if it looks a bit different, I might say that, okay, this is a mobile phone or this is a TV remote. Because I've seen those objects before. So even if it is in a new form, I can recognize the functionality of that object. Or if you give me a pen, which looks like some other object, I might, fiddle with it for a few minutes and then say, it's a pen. But when you show somebody and ask me, is he God? Do I have knowledge of God before to say that he is or he is not? So most often we go by what Swami says. And that is why the Declaration Day Swami had to say, Nenu Sayini Telimu. I am God and I am Sai. Many years ago, when Swami was standing on the portico and talking to some students and devotees, there was this one devotee who was talking to Swami and he became very emotional. And we all tend to do this. We think that Swami likes to be praised. So this devotee was saying, oh, Swami, you're divine. You're God of all gods, you're God of this, God of that. And in the process of that praise, he said, Swami, you are Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwara. Till then, Swami was quiet and Swami was looking at the boys around. But when he said this, Swami, you're Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwara, Swami stopped and said, what did you say? He said, Swami, you're Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwara. Swami said, Chi, they are my managers. Swami said, I have appointed them and I've given them jobs of creation, sustenance, and destruction. Swami said, I am beyond them. Do we really know who Swami is? I remember many years ago when, after our studies, we were waiting for Swami to give us a job to serve him in the ashram. Swami once called us all for an interview, 10 or 15 of us who were waiting that way. And in the course of that conversation, one of the students told Swami, Swami, you can give us a job whenever you want. There is no hurry. But why don't you at least talk to us now and then? Because Swami had called us after a very, very long time. And he said, Swami, at least keep talking to us now and then. Let's talk about the job later. And in many ways, that boy just voiced all our feelings. We were not telling it, but that boy became emotional and he told that to Swami. And we thought Swami also will be moved by that prayer. But Swami kept a very stoic expression. And Swami was reading a letter and Swami looked at us and said, you think I have no better work to do? Swami said, do you think I have no better work to do? And then very, very casually, very simply, Swami told a statement which on any other occasion when Swami said, I don't have time to talk to you, would have hurt you. But what Swami said that day was a lesson which we all cherish, because Swami said, Yenni lokalu chuskovalra nenu. Swami said, how many worlds do I have to take care? Do you think I don't have any work and I have time to talk to you? These were the very words of Swami. Yenni lokalu chuskovalra nenu. How many worlds I have to take care of. And it was that Swami that day we were sitting and saying, Swami, you're not talking to us, you're not taking our letters, we are very upset with you. Do we even recognize whom we are interacting with, whom we have invited into our lives? And when such a divine personage walks into our lives, shouldn't our lives change? Before I come to what exactly is probably the change we can all try to bring in, I would like to say a few words about the people around Swami during this entire period. Not all of them accepted Swami as he is. There are many, many incidents. If you read Swami's childhood, you would know that when Swami was brought back from Urukonda, there was somebody who came and told, this boy is possessed, we'll have to take him to Gatikachalam. There is a Narasimha Swami temple there and we have to take him there. And this little boy, 14 years old, he laughed and he said, why do I have to be taken to my own temple? These were the very words of Swami, and people around were thinking this boy has really lost it. There's something really wrong with him. So even when Swami was revealing himself, not all people around were able to accept it. And we all know that in 1947, his brother was still writing a letter to him. And he said, you could still become a very good officer in the government. Because that was what they were thinking, that at some point, this whole show will come to an end and we can get back to our lives. But for those who acknowledge Swami as a guru, as a divine person, as the ultimate among gods, their lives accordingly changed. Many times when Swami is talking about himself, Swami would say, I am God, but so are you. I am divine, but so are you. But Swami would add, the difference is, I know it. The difference is that I know that I am God, but you don't know it. So in the knowing, there is so much of importance. But then we ask ourselves, but we do know that Swami is God. Why is it not making the difference? Because when you know, and the change results in action. Swami once was telling to some of the teachers of the university, Swami said, there is fire there. You realize that the fire burns. Even if I catch your hand and put your hand into the fire, you will wriggle out and run away. Why? Because that understanding is so deep that fire will hurt, that fire will burn. And when you realize that Swami is divine, that realization should be so strong that it will reflect in our action. what can be that action? Acknowledge Swami as anything. If you acknowledge Swami as a guru, it is not just saying that I believe Swami is my guru. If you acknowledge Swami as your guru, it means you are promising obedience. If you acknowledge Swami as your mother, it means you're saying, to make my mother happy is my duty. You're acknowledging your duty as a son, as a daughter, as a child. When you acknowledge Swami as your father, again you are promising obedience, promising acceptance of his discipline. And the change which I said should reflect in these things. There is that beautiful story which Swami would narrate, where there is this man who is doing meditation under a tree for many, many years, and sage Narada comes by, and this man looks at Narada and says, you keep going to Vishnu Loka. When you see the Lord, ask him, when will I get my darshan? So Narada is very impressed by the penance this man is doing, so he goes to Lord Vishnu, and the story goes that Vishnu is sleeping there. He's taking rest on his serpent bed. But Narada is so impressed by this devotee that he's not having the patience to wait. He says, Lord, you know what? I met a devotee like this. He's doing very good, very hard penance, and all that he wants is he wants to see you. So he comes to Vishnu and says, please tell me, Lord, when will you give him darshan? So Lord Vishnu says, some other time, Narada, don't talk to me now. I'm not interested in the topic. So Narada insists, no, Swami, you should tell me. Tell me when will you give him darshan? And apparently in that irritation, Lord Vishnu says, tell him it will take as many years as there are number of leaves on the tree under which he is sitting. And next moment, Narada thinks of the tree under which he was sitting, and it was a tree with a huge canopy. So Narada is so disappointed, he goes back to this man, and he tells him, he says, I met Lord Vishnu, and this is what he said. He said it will take as many years as there are leaves on the tree under which you are sitting. And the moment this was told, this man starts jumping into a dance, and he's ecstatic, he's dancing, and he's so happy. And Narada is like pretty confused. Why is he happy about? I mean, I've given him a pretty sad news. And this man starts dancing, and the next moment he sees that Lord Vishnu appears there. And Narada is thinking, what is this? Just now I've told him that this is the message Vishnu gave, and this man is appearing, and this Lord is appearing here like this. What will this man think of me? So there he is, Vishnu is giving darshan, the devotee is lost in the bliss. So after that, Narada approaches Lord Vishnu and says, Lord Vishnu, this is not fair. No, you told me and I conveyed it to me, and how can you go back on your word? And then Lord Vishnu says, the moment you told him that it will take so many thousands of years, and after that he will get my darshan, this devotee was so happy that after all I will get his darshan. After all, I will get what I'm praying for. And he was so happy, and that happiness was so spontaneous and so true that I couldn't care less about my word. I couldn't care less about my promise. I decided to give him my darshan right away. When we acknowledge that this Lord of the Lords, the master of this entire universe, masters, as we sing in our national anthem, Bhagya Vidata, he is the one who is the string puller of all our destinies. And such a Lord we have invited into our lives, shouldn't it express in boundless happiness? Shouldn't it express in happiness which, as Swami would say, costless happiness? There's no reason for you to be happy. It's not like you won a lottery. It's not like you've got a promotion. Costless happiness. If anybody asks, Swami is in my life. And that happiness is a result of fearlessness. There's nothing to fear. Here is the Swami who can solve any problem, who can cure any ailment, and he is mine. He is my Swami. Where is the question of fear? And that boundless happiness and that boundless fear coupled with obedience. You know, even if I buy a normal gadget, I'm always wondering what is the best way to use it. You will see a user manual, you go and see an unboxing video on YouTube, because we want to know how to deal with this new piece of gadget or piece of technology which I found. And here we are leading lives And here is the one who is the creator of all life, and he is giving us a code of conduct. He's saying, this is how you should live. This is the manual of all manuals. So when we acknowledge that, yes, Swami is divine, yes, Swami is God, yes, he's the master of all universes, Inni lokal chuskoవాలి, Swami said. When we acknowledge that, automatically we'll obey what he says. And this fearlessness, this boundless happiness with obedience, the more we acknowledge Swami's divinity, the more we should grow in this. You know, when we were students, we would always keep judging the people around us. Swami talks to this boy more, but he doesn't seem to be so disciplined. There's some other boy who seems to be a very, very good boy, but Swami is not talking to him. And when we were discussing this once, we came up with this little explanation of us. See, when we look at each other, when I look at you or you look at me, we generally judge people based on what they are, right? What are you? What am I? What is he? What is she? So in algebra, when we are fixing a value for a variable, we call it x. X is usually used as a variable, right? So invariably, we judge each other by saying, what is the value of x? Okay, this person is good, this person is bad. But when Swami looks at us, we came up with this explanation that Swami looks at delta x. So delta x is, in algebra, we say x1 minus x2 or x0 minus x1. What were you and what you are? What is that difference? That is delta x. And Swami will always respond to the change in you, not what you are. So every day can we ask ourselves, what is the change in me? What is the change in me? The best thing I can find in the whole of the world, I have found. What is the change in me? And can we for ourselves ask, what change have I brought today? What change have I brought this week? What change have I brought this month? And I think that is the best way to celebrate this day of change. But when we do this, there is this beautiful verse or statement in the Vedas. I started by saying that, if you ask me, is Swami God? I'll tell you that I will not be able to tell you because I don't know God. But the fact is, you will never be able to know God. Because the Veda says, Brahmavid Brahmaiva Bhavati. The day you know God, you become God. So you can never know God and not be God. So in this process of acknowledging Swami's divinity, and as you acknowledge, you will start knowing more and more of Swami. I told you about that incident when Swami said that I am the boss of Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwara. One of the teachers who heard this looked at Swami and he was so very overwhelmed by this revelation that Swami gave and said, Swami, you are so divine, but we don't realize it. What should I do to realize your entire divinity? And Swami said, very, very simple. One simple sadhana is there. Swami said, every day remind yourself, Swami is God, Swami is God, Swami is God. And this teacher said, Swami, such a simple thing. I thought you were going to give me some yogic practice. Swami said, no, remind yourself, Swami is God, Swami is God, Swami is God. And when we remind ourselves, ask, if Swami is God, what am I supposed to do? If Swami is God, how should my life change? And when this change happens, as the Veda says, Brahmavid Brahmaiva Bhavati, as your knowledge of God increases, as your realization of whom Swami is and his divinity increases, you are yourself going closer and closer to your inner divinity. And the day when we completely recognize whom Swami is, Brahmavid, when we know his divinity completely, we become one with that divinity. And it was Swami saying that is the change I've come to bring. He said, this is the day of change. Because this is the day when you acknowledge Swami, this is the change which begins happening in us, and it is up to each one of us to foster this change and to ensure that this change happens and there is progress. I thought these were the only words I'll share with you. These were the thoughts I'll share with you. I thank you all for the opportunity and for your very patient listening. I most lovingly offer this effort at Swami's lotus feet. Thank you. Jai Sai Ram.